Welcome back to Life on Purpose. If you've ever walked into the wellness world and thought, is it just me? Or is this kind of weird? You're in the right place. This episode is for the ones who went looking for something real and ended up in a space that felt more curated than connected. Like back in '09, it wasn't ring lights and reels. It was more inspirational quote posters and overpriced protein powder. Do you remember those days? But this is called community versus industry, and we're going there. Because there's a difference between building something that actually supports people and building something that just performs in the wellness economy. Back when we opened Sutra, we weren't trying to disrupt anything. We just wanted to live what we loved. So we created a space for movement and meditation and massage therapy, raw juice and connection, because it just didn't exist in our area. In our world, wellness wasn't a product. It was just our way of being, how we moved and how we related, how we took care of ourselves and each other. That's what community meant to us. It's not a label you wear. It's not a membership that you pay for. It's not a word you just toss around because it fits the image or sounds nice. Like, do you remember community with unity in all caps? Community. It's like, prove it. Show me. Show me. Because it has to be more than a poster. Community is a verb. It's something you do. It lives in the way that you show up, the way that you care, the way that you stay. But it turns out that's not how the industry does things. So yeah, we accidentally picked a fight with the whole system. And in our case, we didn't even realize we were making a choice, because to us, community was the whole point. There was no choice. We didn't even know there was a line between people and profit. And apparently that made us radical. And here's what we mean by community versus industry. Community is human. It's messy, honest. It's built on real relationships. It's people showing up for each other, and not just when it looks good, not just for optics. Industry is performance. It's about packaging wellness so that it can be sold back to you with a prettier font and a higher price tag. And community says, you belong here just as you are. But industry says you'll belong once you purchase the right image for yourself. One is relational and the other is transactional. And in our case, we didn't just choose community. We never even fathomed anything else. And that made us the odd ones out. Isn't that weird? So today we're telling the story of how staying true to ourselves and what we believe in made us outsiders in a space that was supposed to be about inclusion and healing. Let's just get into it. When we opened our first studio, we weren't trying to start a revolution. But boy, did we. We were just trying to share something that had always been part of our DNA. Wellness wasn't a brand to us. It was just a way of life. We were those people, still are. The vinegar cleaning, push mowing, no paper towels, cook everything from scratch people. The peppermint oil before Tylenol people. And notice I said before and not instead, right? We're just going to try to not need those things if we can, right? Let nature work in the way that it can. And nothing against, anything else, but first, nature first. Not to be trendy, not to look cool, just because it made sense to us. It felt good. It felt true. And we'd always been that way since before we even knew each other, Matt and I. But by this point, we had 3 kids already. We went natural childbirths, no epidurals, midwives, cozy home settings. Like, we made our own baby food and let the babies nurse for as long as they wanted, needed, And And we held Sunday morning manifestation talks before manifestation was so widely accepted as a truth. It was our thing. I mean, even when we were dating, like weeks into it, we would have those wonderful, powerful, meaningful talks about like, what do you want to do with your life? And what are your dreams? And how can we take action on those? And our spirituality was bigger than anything else in our life. And that was really the essence, the foundation of our wellness. Matt and I had been on this path since our teens. We were reading Deepak Chopra while our friends were watching The Real World. Not that there's anything wrong with it. It's just different. We were meditating before anyone that we knew could pronounce the word chakras. And I tell you this not because like we're so much better. Not at all. We weren't better. We were just the weirdos. We were those people, and we were okay with that. And so when we opened Sutra, we thought we were entering a world full of other weirdos, a place where our passion for wellness would just plug right in. Just plug right in, we found our people kind of a thing. Where that group would be heart forward and mission driven and all about that mind, body, soul alignment. But it turns out we weren't entering a community at all. We were just walking straight into an industry. And we learned that in week 1. We were exhausted. We were broke. We were still assembling lobby furniture. We had a newborn in the Bjorn and 2 toddlers playing in the boxes. But we were wide-eyed and hopeful. We were equal parts sweaty and idealistic. We thought the hard part was over. The part where you risk everything to follow your dream. And then they walked in. A group of women, perfectly styled, full hair, full makeup, matching outfits, matching water bottles, each one arriving in a shiny car like they were showing up to a red carpet. And it was just a Wednesday yoga class, like lunch class at noon, The energy was off. It definitely wasn't a let's breathe and connect kind of vibe. It was more like a we're here to be seen vibe. It was palpable. You could feel that. You could almost hear the mental snapshots being taken, imagining the posts, if there was such a thing back then, before before the practice even began. Granted, this is before social media and things like that, but still it felt very social media influencer, And turns out they were influencers, but a different kind. They were sent by a national yoga apparel brand who shall remain nameless. But if you're thinking who you're thinking, you're right. And their job was to show up to small local studios in their gear and make it look organic. We weren't partners in this. We were the props. We were the props. It was supposed to look like everybody shows up to yoga class wearing these outfits. This is what you do. This is what the cool kids do, and honestly, kudos to the marketing strategy. So if it wasn't happening to us, we might have been impressed. Like, oh, that's a clever way to trick people. But in the moment, we were just confused. Like, wait, is this what wellness is now? Like, I guess we had never really been a part of an external wellness community. So we didn't know, like, is this what it is? Or like, what is this? And Matt, in his usual hilarious wit, and he is truly the funniest person I've ever met in my life, okay? He tweeted, driving your Hummer to yoga is like wearing your fur to the zoo. It was funny. Isn't that hilarious? It was lighthearted, but it was also not appreciated. Within hours, they left 1-star review, all those women. No context, just complaints, sabotage. We were only days into opening. I think it was like day 3. We didn't have regulars. We didn't have a safety net. People didn't know us or what we stood for. We were just a family with our entire dreams, hopes, dreams, finances, everything was on the line. And suddenly we weren't just running a studio. We were caught in the gears of something much bigger. And that was our wake-up call. Like this wasn't just wellness. This was the wellness industry. And it had unspoken rules we were already breaking. And it was shocking. At first, the backlash was subtle. Whispers, side eyes, partnerships that never materialized, events we weren't invited to, media that conveniently left us out and only us, and always the same underlying narrative about us. We're there, Sutra, not the right kind of wellness, which was wild because we were living this stuff. It wasn't a performance. It wasn't branding. It was just our lives, So what do you mean? We were talking about energy and neuroplasticity over coffee. That was a regular conversation. That's just who we are. We were living with one car, no cable, and a closet full of clothes that didn't change with the trends. We're dreaming out loud every single day. Walking the talk long before anyone was watching. And meanwhile, the industry was out here selling $90 leggings and polished identities. And our version of wellness was connection and consistency and community. And theirs was merch and metrics and magazine spreads. We didn't fit because we didn't play. And that made us dangerous. There were so many nights Matt and I would sit on the couch and just look at each other exhausted, another day, right? And we say, this would be so much easier if we just played the game. If we just raised our prices to feel more elite, if we faked the image, if we bought our way into the right circles, because, everything was and still is pay to play. But every time we considered it, something in us said no, because we didn't build Sutra to impress the industry. We didn't even know the industry existed. So why do we care? Why are we caring? It's hard, but we built Sutra to help people, to make wellness our whole life and not just our personal life. And straying from that would have been a betrayal of everything we stood for and everything we'd already accomplished together. Plus, we wanted to sleep at night. And we wanted our kids to see what integrity looked like in the wild. That's the most important thing, was being able to model this kind of integritous behavior for our kids. And we wanted to build something that would still feel good years later, even if it took longer, even if it meant less money, fewer followers, and more, resistance. So we didn't cave. We just didn't. We didn't rebrand. We didn't chase the trends. That's just not who we are. We just kept showing up as us, unfiltered, unbothered. And that, we'd come to find out, was our very first act of rebellion. And here's the twist that no one talks about. The longer we stayed true, the more things started to shift. Not just in the industry, but in the people. And at first, it was really subtle. It was like a message here or a question there. Studio owners quietly reaching out and asking hey, how are you filling your classes without doing all of that? That, which we all knew by now, meant the usual formula, paid partnerships and a certain style of branding and overpriced memberships. And eventually, even the bigger players started watching. The same brands that once dismissed us started sounding familiar. You could feel it in their messaging, their tone, even the way they talked about community was shifting. They were circling closer to something we'd been saying all along. And it was flattering in a way, and also ironic, because we weren't paying attention to them. The real shift was happening right in front of us. So we weren't trying to change them, but we were still changing them. But more important than that, the people were changing. At Sutra, we saw it right away. Very early on, someone would walk in for their first visit already on defense. They were bracing for judgment before they even rolled out their mat. Full hair, full makeup, designer, outfit, designer coffee, designer attitude to match. It was like you could feel the armor. You could see it in their eyes. They're nervously scanning the room and, am I good enough to be here? And do I fit in? And they're just like altogether uncomfortable. It was hard to watch. And not one of them was actually breathing. And to be clear, we weren't judging them. We were recognizing them. We were seeing them because we knew what it felt like to be put under a microscope, to feel like you had to prove you belonged. So we knew what was going on. We could see it. But we also knew this. The best parts of wellness don't come from pretending. They come from being held in a space where you can just drop the image and get real. And that's exactly what we watched happen again and again. The second, sometimes the third, but honestly, by the second visit, the transformation was obvious. They were wearing sweatpants and hoodies because they were just comfortable. Their hair was in a real messy bun, not the Instagram beautiful kind, like an actual messy bun. They were no makeup. Half-empty raw juice from our chop shop in hand. They were hugging strangers in the lobby. They were sitting cross-legged on the floor, deep in conversation with someone they just met. They were being confident, strong, and totally at ease in their own skin. This is on day 2. We used to tell the newbies, here, you can just let your freak flag fly. Just be yourself, because that's the best thing you can be. And they'd say things like, I've never felt this good in my body. I didn't even know yoga could feel like this. Which I know exactly what they mean, because after a certain class, here and there, you get this full body buzz. That's different than the traditional, what we call yoga buzz. After every yoga class, you kind of have this like high feeling, this high head in the clouds, body is floating, feeling amazing in your body. This was different. This was like, they would come up, this is what it looked like. They would come up to me after class, their eyes like this. And they would say, my whole body is buzzing. I once had this lady say, my nose is tingling. Even my nose is tingling. I'm like, I know. We have a class style called Bliss Out. And that's when that would happen the most. It was very yin to the yang of wellness. And it'll make your whole body open. It'll unblock your energy meridians. It'll get things flowing where they weren't flowing before, and then the physical outcome of that is just like a tingling sensation, a full body buzz. And it was hilarious, to see people who have never felt that way before just come up to me like, something is happening. It was awesome. And they used to say things like, I used to feel like I had to earn rest. And you want to know what I did all weekend? I literally took 3 naps and painted a picture and meal prepped. I never do that. It was just wonderful. Especially day 2. We had a lot of people cry in the studio, and not sad tears really, but just healing tears, the releasing of resistance. When you unblock so much in your physical body, it unblocks all of that's in your heart space, your emotional space, your mental space, and all of that releasing of resistance and unblocking of energy just flows. So people are crying, people are laughing, they're hanging out, they're not ready to leave. It was incredible. No matter how stressful or anything that was going on in our lives, when we were at Sutra, we were just bombarded with full hearts and gratitude the whole entire time, because that's what we got to witness and experience every single day after every single class and during every single class. And just the whole time we were there, it was just such a gift. We felt so lucky and blessed to be there, holding space and witnessing the transformation and being able and allowed to be part of all of those lives in that way. So special to us. It was so special, and it still is, and it always will be. You know, we still have a box of love notes, like a big shoebox, you know, the bigger shoeboxes, like for boots, you know, a big shoebox full of love notes from the students who come to Sutra. And then, of course, we have an equal amount or maybe more of email love notes, but stories, and these are handwritten stories of healing and growth and breakthroughs and gratitudes and, you know, dream chasing and goal accomplishing, and people telling us that Sutra gave them their life back. I'm going to make it through without crying. And it wasn't because we had cool lighting or perfect playlists, even though we did. We were known for our cool space and our incredible music. DJ Disco Nap Dad. It was because we never asked them to be anyone but themselves. And we just gave them permission. Something the industry never does. Permission to be raw, to be unsure, to fall over, to rest, to show up in whatever state they were in and still be worthy of care. It was a no filters, no performance, and no pressure to be perfect situation. And it still is. It's all about, you know, we just want you to breathe. Just breathe. That's it. And I know that sounds so trite and you've heard it a million times, but it's still the truth. And once they felt it, really felt it, there was no going back. You could see their nervous systems shifting in front of you. You could feel them expanding and opening. You could watch them just stop performing and start experiencing. And that's when we realized something big. We realized that the people, they were our proudest accomplishment. What their transformation was our proudest accomplishment. It was the best thing we'd ever been part of. It wasn't the magazine features or the awards or being named one of the state's most inspiring people, although we were so grateful for those accomplishments. And we celebrated. We went out for tacos every single time. That's like what we do. It's tacos. That's what Matt and I do. But it just, and that's number two. All of those things are number two. Number one, the most proudest thing we've ever done was watching and being part of the transformation of people coming home to themselves. Watching humans become themselves again. Watching strangers turn into family, to community. Watching overachievers learn how to rest. Watching skeptics soften. Watching mothers give themselves grace. Watching introverts open up. And watching perfectionists just finally exhale. That's what real wellness does. It doesn't just change how you look. It changes how you feel. It heals your body, your mind, your heart. And that's what we're here to do. Not by shouting louder, not by marketing better or selling anything, but by holding the line, by refusing to become what we were never meant to be. By letting our business do what it was born to do. Remind people who they already are. So now let's go back to the beginning for a second. Because at the time, there were two main schools of wellness. On one side, you had the purists. They were crunchy, granola, super rigid, right? Just think purists. You had to speak Sanskrit. You had to move a certain way, and you definitely never mix yoga with anything, you know, certainly not wine, which we were known to do. And on the other side, you had the polished crew or the image crew, right? The cool kids, designer healing. Every outfit was coordinated and every brand was curated. You know, wellness was an aesthetic and not a lived experience. They were opposites in style, but identical in energy. Do you know what I mean by that? They were both obsessed with image, both deeply invested in being right. And if you didn't fit into either of their boxes, it was like, too bad, then you don't belong. You're not even really wellness, because this is the only two things wellness can be. There was no space for us, you know, the ones who are just human, the ones who are messy and curious and definitely non-conforming, the ones who came to wellness for healing, came to wellness decades before we opened a studio. And for healing, not a costume change. This is about healing, not about image. The purists judged us for not being spiritual enough. The image makers judged us for not being cool enough. And neither group ever really got into the actual healing. It was all for show, all style, no soul. And here's where it gets really good, because while we were over here just doing our thing, you know, being part of people's transformation, coming home to themselves, holding space, right? Just loving, you know, we were quietly building a real community. The industry was watching. At first, watching silently. No applause, no acknowledgement, just that sideline energy, you know, that highbrow, that, you know, almost like side-eyeing us the whole time, just the shade energy. But something started to shift. Our classes didn't look like theirs. Our events didn't follow their rules. Our meditations were trippy and wild. And boy, do I have some stories there. Our fusions were weird. Our entire ecosystem, from yoga to juice to events to community care, it was just different. It was so different. And then we started to hear our own words echoed back to us, verbatim. Suddenly, the same people who criticized us were now doing what we do. They were hosting full moon events and running rooftop classes and quoting our meditations, which means they were there. They were in the meditations and then stealing catchphrases from them and quotes from them. They were repeating our class names right off the website. They were offering similar wild, trippy experiences with sound and breath and ritual. Partnering with local businesses for yoga and brunch collaborations and yoga and wine and yoga and this and yoga and that, which before was like not okay when we were doing it. Now everyone's doing it. They were stealing our entire prenatal program, Sutra Mum, and taking it everywhere that we weren't. It was like crazy, right? Studios that once excluded us were now hosting knockoff trainings, now offering accessible pricing, now celebrating the same raw and messy and real life wellness that they used to roll their eyes at. They started tossing around words like authenticity and vulnerability, nervous system regulation, permission, rest, community. The very same words we'd been using since Blackberries were a thing, because remember when we opened March 16th, 2009, we just both had Blackberries, because that was like that's what you had. That was the smartest phone, or at least in our world, right? And we'd laugh out loud in our kitchen, in our living rooms, whenever we had a second. We were like, wait, did we just get quoted in an ad for the same industry that tried to cancel us? What? And here's the thing though. We didn't campaign We didn't call anyone out. We didn't storm the gates of wellness and the elite with pitchforks and Palo Santo, like we're going to cleanse you. We just stayed true. We built a community. We were there for the people. We didn't even care what was happening outside of our studio, because what was happening inside of our studio was more than we could ever be grateful for in an entire lifetime of feeling grateful. It was more than we could ever ask for. It was the best experience of our lives outside of our family. Watching people come home to themselves all day, every day, 7 days a week. Our hearts were exploding with love and gratitude. We built a community. We held space. We kept teaching the truth, even when it wasn't trending. And for a long time, that truth only spoke in whispers because our community, our audience that could hear us was so small compared to the industry. But truth spreads. And even if it takes the scenic route, it will get there, And over time, those whispers became conversations. Those conversations became pivots. And those pivots started reshaping the entire industry from the inside out. Studios we were once too unpolished to partner with were now quoting our mission statements. Our mission statements. Like what mattered most, they were saying, is what mattered most to them too. They were now like referencing our philosophies and our policies. Now designing spaces to feel more deco punk than shiny yoga box. We watched the same people who tried to out-trend us, out-brand us, out-market us, start to model the exact version of wellness we'd been proudly living all along. Not paying attention to them at all. They swapped the aesthetic for presence. The pressure for permission. The perfection for real people in real bodies with real needs. They stopped asking, what does wellness look like? And they started asking, how does wellness feel? And while we never needed the credit, to be honest, it was a little confusing, because what started as our rebellion that we got almost crucified for became this ripple effect. What once got us left out started getting quietly replicated. No press releases, no apologies, no one saying, hey, you were right all along. And that was okay, because we weren't in it for the applause. We were in it for the people. The ones who didn't care about the rules, the ones who trusted us to help them, the ones who just wanted to feel better and breathe deeper and find a space where they could actually heal. That's the power of walking your talk, even when it's hard, even when no one's clapping. Because eventually, even the slickest, glossiest, most airbrushed machine of an industry has to look up and say, dang, that actually works. Maybe we got this part wrong. Maybe there's something to this whole sutra thing. And while the world kept evolving and the algorithms kept changing, we stayed the same. Grounded, gritty, growing. Never a brand, just a movement dressed as a studio. And somehow, against all odds, the entire industry shifted towards us. And here's what I want to leave you with. You don't have to play the game. You don't have to earn your way into the illusion. You don't have to climb some invisible ladder of clout to make a difference. What you do have to do is stay true. Because that's how you change things. Not by yelling louder, but by standing taller, rooted and grounded. We didn't just reject the industry, we outlived it. We outloved it. And somehow, without trying to, we outshined it. We became the industry norm We raised the bar and set new standards. We're proof that you can build something real, something rooted without selling out. So here's your reminder. Community isn't just a vibe, an image. It's not a photo. It's not a filter. It's not a staged circle of people pretending to connect. Community is a verb. It's how you show up and how you hold space. It's how you lead, even when no one's clapping for you. It's how you love, even when it's inconvenient. So just keep doing that. Keep being the one who does instead of the one who just posts. Because that's how you win. And when you win, we all win. So just be you. We're Matt and Rebecca, and we'll see you next time.